Welcome to True Print for Life. I'm your host, Christina Vera. Today, we're really excited to welcome you back for another amazing episode. As you know, Maylin and I try really, really hard to bring amazing guests to the show to not only share their personal journeys, but to also provide expertise, whether it be in business, finance, lifestyle, all the things. And today will be nothing short of that. I'm actually really excited to have this guest. And you've heard me talk about her in previous episodes. And today you actually get to hear from her directly. And so today I have one of my mentors that will be joining us, Miss Linda Spence, which I'm so excited to have you on. Linda is a phenomenal woman, entrepreneur. She was born in Birmingham, Alabama, and she is just such a knowledgeable woman. And I've learned so much from her over the years. She co-owns a daycare facility learning center with her daughter called A Better Choice Daycare and Learning Center, which actually has 5-star gold daycare, which is not an easy thing to achieve, which we'll talk a little bit more about. And so, Linda, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm super excited to have you. I've talked about you not only in previous episodes, but even in like a speaking engagement I had probably about 3 years ago. They had asked me about, just the power of mentorship and what does that look like or what does that mean to me? And when she said that, you instantly popped into my mind. And it was around the time that I met you. And I feel like at that time, because I thought about this last night in preparation for today, I have known you almost 17, 18 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was a time period where I felt like when I first met you that I had never even heard the term mentor used as loosely as it's used now, or I won't say loosely, like just as common as it is now. Back then, I don't remember hearing so much around like having a mentor or coaching and things of that nature. And so when I reflected back on that, when that reporter asked me, I remember when I first met you and just all of the tips and tools that you taught me in that beginning season, really, of my professional journey. And I just, I tell people all the time how grateful I am to have met you because it really has carried me through my season of just building and networking and really understanding the dynamics of women in business. And so where do you find that mentoring gene or that just kind of how you move and operate, like where does that come from?
Growing up in the South, I was mentored by a lot of women, neighbors, relatives. It was a privilege to just sit around and listen to them talk about life from a female perspective. And when I say a female perspective, some worked, some didn't, some were educated, some were not. But one of the things that you did learn is the foundation of building off of as a young woman, no matter what your dreams were. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate those women. I think about them often. Like you were saying about me, I too think about them quite often. And just all those life nuggets that they gave me that books just don't teach you.
I love that. So hearing you say that, it makes me think about The Village a little bit. And you mentioned, how that was so influential to you. And so share with me a little bit about just like your journey and your background, coming from, having what it sounds like a really amazing, strong village and how you've navigated into your successful careers. I mean, I've known you for several years and every career that I have known you to be in, you've always been very successful. And share with me a little bit and our listeners, just like your journey in that and why do you feel like you have been so successful?
The journey starts with you. I think a lot of people think that if they have an idea on a business, that they can just dive into it. I often tell young people, if you have an idea of a business or a career or going to college to become educated on something specific that you are interested in, it starts with self. Mm-hmm. You have got to get your habits right, your mind right. I think and in particular, when you're thinking about owning a business, the first work should come on you. Are you a person who's self-motivated no matter when there is no one to motivate you? Are you a person who is organized when you don't feel like it or you're in a lazy mode of being organized? Are you the type of person that can stick to something no matter if you're failing at it in the beginning? Because I learned real quickly that you fail your way to success. You learn from all those things that doesn't work out, that you can't do, from people who will let you down. You learn from those things, and those things are failure. But as you collect those failures together, they turn into successes.
Wow. I love that you said that because it's a discipline.
Yes, it is.
And I think you have always been very big on that. One of the tips I remember very early on when I first met you. Now, let me share with our listeners because I've never shared this part.
Something funny.
When I first met Miss Linda, we were working for a mortgage company, and they placed me and another young lady that I knew at the time into the same office as Miss Linda. And, I couldn't have told you what kind of job this actually was. I was just applying. So going back to the beautiful example Linda gave with having like intention and strategy, there was no intention and strategy in this particular moment. But they put us in this room, and actually, Linda didn't speak to us for probably the first couple of weeks. It was very silent. And then eventually the one girl that was in the office, she fell off. She stopped coming. It just didn't work out. I kept showing up. I was trying to actively learn the business because at the time I could see myself in the finance world of mortgages, and I had never learned anything about it, had never been exposed to any kind of industry like that. And so one day I ended up asking Linda for help on a loan that I was reviewing. And several months later, she shared with me, she said, I needed just to see, what you were about before I invested myself in that way. And I so appreciated that because, it taught me early on that you don't just invest in any and everybody, really being mindful as to how you engage, taking the time. So she was taking the time to fill me out to see, okay, she's going to be here in 2 weeks kind of a thing. But you always taught me about the importance of not getting comfortable with how people treat you when you're winning, but how they treat you when you're having a hard time. And in both industries that we've worked together, that couldn't have been more clear. And that's a lesson you taught me that I've taken into every element of every business or position I've been in. Is really paying attention to how people treat you, not when you're winning, not when everything is going the way you want it to go, but really how do folks treat you when things are, at the absolute worst they could be. That's how you really can judge someone's character. And I mean, for me, that was just such a valuable lesson. And it taught me also, how I should be mindful of how I treat others. And I guess you've taught me many things, but that was definitely one that definitely stuck with me. Where did that lesson come for you, for that it stood out to you enough to share that with me?
I think it came from my father was a business owner, and he was a business owner in a time that that wasn't all that popular amongst minorities. One of his mentors was A.G. Gaston in Birmingham, Alabama, and A.G. Gaston was probably the first millionaire in Alabama, a man of color. And he was very instrumental in mentoring my father. And my father became fairly successful in his business also. So I think I learned that from my father in watching my father, that no matter how people disappointed him, he never let up off the gas.
I love that. And so what kind of business did your dad have?
My father owned a nightclub.
Okay.
And he owned a trucking company. And he was very successful at it.
That's wonderful. And so when did you come to Ohio? Because you were you raised in Alabama?
Born and raised in Alabama, came to Columbus, Ohio, right out of high school. And because my father's businesses started to fail and they moved here. And then when they retired and moved back to Alabama, I just stayed.
You just stayed. I love that. Well, I'm glad you stayed because I would have never met you in Alabama. So what would you say, like what motivates you? Because I think, and you mentioned it, you started to kind of share a little bit about like it's bigger than just a motivation, it's a discipline. And just seeing everything you've accomplished, and I mean, you're still accomplishing so much. What motivates you, and what is that drive for you to keep, putting yourself out there, keep building businesses, keep doing the work that you're doing?
Because I make myself my biggest competition. And I set goals for myself. And I always want to rise above the goals that I had last year, this year. I don't focus in on other people. I focus in on me. What I need to work on personally, what I need to do. And then as I become successful, if I can share those successes with other people, I do.
I love that. And what has been some of your biggest lessons, like in any of your settings, whether it be when you were in corporate America or in your entrepreneurship journey? What have you found to be some of your biggest lessons?
Biggest lesson is knowing how to deal with people and to understand that no one thinks exactly like you. You may find people like you and I who have a lot in common, but nobody is exactly you. And I think you set yourself up for failure when you have the expectation of people. I tend to sit back and watch a person and see if what they're bringing to the table work for me. Or if it doesn't, but I'm always going to make those adjustments to accept people for who they are and not judge them for who I think they should be. And I found that to be very beneficial for me because I'm never disappointed with people.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. And have you found that the workload or, just the process changes based on the industries you've been in? Because you have a huge background in many different areas. I mean, right now you are owning and operating a childcare learning center, which is a huge, company to have because it's not just you. I mean, you're impacting the lives of families and young people. And so what has that journey been like for you in building out this amazing learning facility that you've gotten quite a few awards already for?
I found that being in the childcare industry, that there were so many things in my life that was preparing me for that. I just didn't know it. Like, for instance, when my husband and I divorced and I found myself to be a single parent, my house was the place to be for children because I love children. And when everyone else was out and about on Saturday night, I was the babysitter. And now fast forward, I see why. I learned in corporate America how to wheel and deal with people because I was dealing with people that were far more educated than I, that I was supervising. And I had to learn how to put out fires. I had to learn how to deal with different personalities. And now I've learned all that was leading me right to where I am now. So when they say life is a journey, it really is. And now I'm in a business where I just love because I'm doing everything that life prepared me to do.
I love that. And earlier you mentioned about the importance of the village. And in a previous episode, we were talking about the importance and impacts of having a village. And we're finding and having more conversations with folks that are saying like that village component is not like it used to be, or for some folks or many folks, it's non-existent altogether. What are your thoughts on, is the village gone, or, how can folks be intentional if they feel like it's gone to create that, even if it's not something that's being offered to them?
The village is still around. Like, for instance, your relationship with me and my relationship with you, you are much younger than I am. However, you're humble enough to listen. I am much older than you. However, I'm humble enough to listen to you because I, too, have learned quite a bit from you. I learned how to fake it till you make it. I learned how to navigate through things from you. A lot of it we laughed about,
Right.
but a lot of it, like you, I hold on to because I learned that lesson. So I think that you can always have a village if you're humble enough to be willing to learn, no matter who that you're learning from. You can learn from your children. You can learn from your grandparents. You can learn from the elderly couple next door. You can learn from the young people who you work with, but you have to be mindful to be humble enough to let people tell you things, even if it's uncomfortable things about yourself, because you never grow in comfortableness. You always grow when you're uncomfortable.
So true. It's so true. So being humble enough to be able to learn and listen, I couldn't agree more. I've been in so many settings, especially over the past probably 4 or 5 years, where I've been in rooms and the amount of ego that floats around in spaces that really there should be no ego, especially for some of the foolishness that that I witnessed in different settings. And so to your point, I think we've started to put so many things before people, business before people, politics before people. And we're finding that, we're losing the human elements of the work that we should be doing, the relationships that we should be building. It's funny because I remember, I recently, visited my mom. I was just there this morning, actually. And I asked her, I was like, do you even see the neighbors anymore? Because I remember as a kid, like the one neighbor, her daughter used to play with my sister on occasion. And she was like, no, like they pull up, they go in the house. And my mom has lived in the same place for many years. And it has just become this like, they don't speak to each other. And then I've experienced that in my own neighborhoods where people will move in and move out, and you might do that awkward wave, when you're rolling the trash can out. But it just feels like people are much more to themselves now and not really willing to necessarily even try to build relationships.
Well, I think that you can thank technology for that because technology, like you were just saying, it has taken out the human element of life for so many people. There's a book that was written by a gentleman, I know his last name is Maslow, and that book predicted that this is how people would be if technology became more prevalent in our lives, So it used to be like, for instance, if you went to the doctor's office and you were sitting there in a group of people waiting to be seen, people would just strike up a conversation with each other, and you would find so many blessings in just talking to people. That doesn't exist anymore. You go to the doctor's office now, and I use that for an example, and everybody's on their phone.
It's true.
So no one is talking to anyone to find out anything. Technology has taken over so much of the human element to the point that people will tell you, if you want to talk to me, please text me first. Let's talk through text. They don't want to talk to you as a person.
Yeah, that's true. I'm not even going to lie. There's certain people I'm like, don't call me. Just text me. But it's to your point. It's like, it's also the relationship, right? And I think technology has evolved so much over the generations. And as a millennial, like, technology was really just taking off around the time that I graduated high school. And so, like, we didn't have these fancy cell phones back then with all the, the Google and all the stuff we have now. It was just starting to slowly, like, you were that girl if you had a pager, and you had to go find a payphone to call somebody back. And so it always felt like an accessory, not a necessity. So I just remember, like, okay, if I was able to have the pager and my mom didn't, could keep up with it, then I had the pager. And then I remember when the cell phone started to come out, you had to pay for the minutes. So it wasn't like you could be on the phone all day. So it wasn't like it wasn't part of the culture back then. And then I remember probably about 5 years after graduation, the cell phones and everything just started to become like, oh, wow, you got like a whole computer on your cell phone. And I know for some of our younger listeners, you're probably like, I didn't know you was that. But technology happened quickly. So it's not that this was so long ago. It was just the advancements, to your earlier point. It's like, I don't think we were prepared for how technology was going to take over in the way that it did. It became almost as if everybody had to have a cell phone. And even now, if you leave the house and you left your phone, if you got the time, you're going to turn back to go get the phone versus before when you used to leave the house and it's like, okay, I'll check the voicemail when I get back. It's like, no, I got to have my phone. And I don't know, and I would welcome your thoughts on like, when do you feel like everything shifted in a way of like everything feeling like the urgency of needing to know right now, being able to get to message somebody right now? Or do you feel that way? Do you feel that that's more so generational, or do you feel like the way of the world has changed so much to where folks, I almost think of like Burger King, like have it your way, like that quick, immediate, I got to call this person, I have to read my email, I have to respond right away. Like, when did we get to a point where everything felt so like immediate?
I think it feels immediate because there's a syndrome that's called the herd syndrome. Mm-hmm. And what the herd syndrome is that people give in to fit in. Mm. So I think because most people are followers, even though they may say they're leaders, mm-hmm. but there's so many experiences that's shown that most people are followers. They're not leaders, even though they may think they are. Mm-hmm. So I think people have just given in. You see everyone has cell phones. You see that's their mode of communication. You just give in to fit in, mm-hmm. And I think that there are lots of people who are into technology reluctantly to fit in because they have to. Like if you're looking for a job, it used to be that you could call, mm-hmm. get the name of the person, send your resume and stuff. If they were interested in it, they would call you back. You can't do that anymore, right. No matter what age you are. So,
it's changed.
So you have to know technology, But I still think that if you want to be successful, go back to the basics. Mm-hmm. Human beings are what will help you to be successful. And I think that you just have to put down that phone sometimes mm-hmm. and really talk to people.
Mm-hmm. Can you share with us kind of like what is your philosophy or process around, exactly what you just said? Like if you want to continue to evolve and you want to continue to build, that relationship building is really critically important. What is kind of your rule of thumb on that process? Like what does that look like for you? Like how are you intentionally connected to like still building relationships with people?
Because it goes back to the basics. Mm-hmm. You just have to understand that everything is not about you mm-hmm. and not being judgmental of people. Yeah. And talking to people, because when you talk to people, there are two things you can learn. You can learn something valuable from them that you would like to utilize, or you can learn something not valuable from them and say, I don't want to be that way. Mm-hmm. I don't want to think that way. I don't want to do that. But that's still learning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, still learning. Absolutely. And what I love about you is, like I said, you have been in so many different career industries and have always been at the top of your industry, like no matter what industry you've been in. What would you say to folks that are kind of in that headspace right now of feeling like, they want to try something new or they want to go into entrepreneurship, but maybe they feel like they're too late or maybe they feel like it's not the right time? What would be your advice to them in terms of how do you weigh out if it is time for a career change or if it is time to go ahead and start that business? What was that like for you when you decided you were going to go into a completely different field, opening up this learning center from the previous businesses you had been a part of before?
My background is mostly in human resources. Mm-hmm. And it goes back to what I said a little earlier. Growth is always uncomfortable. There's never a right time to open a business. You just have to be passionate enough to just go ahead and do it. Mm-hmm. And the universe will give you what you need if you step out of your comfort zone and begin to do whatever it is that you're interested in doing. But I always tell people who are interested in owning their own business is that you have to be your best employee before you can become an employer. And how do you become a good employee in your business? Because you build yourself first. You need to read. You need to become disciplined. You need to make your dream more passionate than the people who are telling you you can't do it or maybe laughing at you or talking about you. You know, you still have to build that strong foundation to know who you are. And I tell especially women that want to own a business, read everything you can to strengthen your mind. And some of the books that I recommend is Why Jenny Can't Lead and The Cinderella Syndrome. Because so many of us, even though it's not popular now, but still in our small circle of women, so many of us are still programmed to be afraid of success. And there's no reason. You can be successful in your own business, have a spouse, have a family, just have to know how to go about it.
I love that. So for you, what does your typical routine look like? Like, take us through. You mentioned reading. Is that something you do every day? Is that kind of like, what time do you wake up in a day? Like, what's your wake up time?
I wake up 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. I strongly believe that, especially when you are in your own business, your feet should never hit the floor without a plan.
So you get up at 5 a.m. and then what?
5 a.m., I read a daily devotion.
Okay.
I pray. I meditate in silence. And that all takes about 45 minutes. Then I start getting ready for the day.
Wow. And so for you, that morning routine is critically important for setting the tone, would you say, for your day?
It sets the tone mentally for me. It gives me the tools that I need to be able to face anything. And in the business that I'm in, no 2 days ever look alike.
Especially dealing with, I love that you love children because it's a lot. And you have how many kiddos in your center,
60,
like on average?
65.
Wow. So when you stressed at home, like I be stressed at home with my 3, and my oldest is 21. Just to think about the fact that you touch 65 lives every single day, and you're teaching them so many different things.
But see, you have to understand their little minds are like sponges, you know, and even the most disruptive of them, you just have to figure out a way to gain their attention. And if the parents are willing to be engaging and let us be their village along with them, we usually can get their children in a very good place, because the number one thing with children, help them to gain control over their emotions, and the sky is the limit for their learning.
I love that. And I want to dive deeper into your advice around parenting. And you mentioned, helping them regulate emotions. So in our next episode, if you tune into that one, we're going to dive a little bit deeper, because your expertise in working with young people, I think it is critically important. Oftentimes I've met with different families and different moms, and feeling like there is a sense of being overwhelmed. I feel like every parent has been overwhelmed at some shape or form. And so, but I think this generation just feels different. And so I try to reflect back on when I was a kid growing up and some of the dynamics that I remember just in my childhood. Like, my mom had her own set of things that she was navigating and trying to raise the 4 of us. And then now I feel like there's it's probably the same, but maybe just looks a little bit different. But there's just, I don't know. I just feel like there's so much more, or maybe it feels like so much more because I'm presently in it. But I'm also meeting so many other moms and even some dads who feel like we were raised a certain type of way. And I don't know that I wouldn't say it was the right way. There was elements of that I wish could have looked differently, because I do feel like there are elements, and I love my parents. I feel like they did the best that they could. but there was a lot of trauma in how we were raised. And thinking back now that I understand what healthy communication looks like and how certain dynamics should have looked, or I didn't know much about even mental health as a kid. Like if they saw you crying too much, or, you know, if you were sad, it was always just like, well, what you got to be sad about? You don't go to work, or, you know, stop crying. Like, you know, it was just like this whole different like setup where now, because if you've grown up like that, you're constantly now trying to be a little more mindful of like, you know, well, tell me how you feel. But then there's an element that I feel like, because, and I'll speak for myself because I've sheltered my kids in some areas, that now I'm concerned, like, do they have what it takes to stand on their own 2 feet in the real world? Because I think in their minds, certain things that their dad and I have worked really, really hard to be able to provide, they think that that's just like their reality. And it's like, no, we work to create this. This is our reality for you, but you have to go out and you have to figure out this life for yourself. And so certainly I'm going to pause now and we're going to come back and we're going to dive a little bit deeper into, you know, just your thoughts and any advice and tips and tools you would have for families that are, you know, actively raising children in this generation. So thank you for listening. As always, here at True Print for Life, we always like to close every single episode with our mantra, which is bigger than you. So I'm going to say it alongside of Linda on the count of 3.
Okay.
It's bigger than you.
Thank you so much for listening today. We're excited and we hope that you follow us on
Instagram, True Print for Life, YouTube channel, also True Print for Life. And make sure that you share, like, watch our videos. Make sure that you follow us on all streaming platforms.